I'm Fidela, 32 years old, and I've built my marketing career from nothing. 5 years ago, I married James from an old money family with traditional values. At first, everything seemed perfect, until that family dinner changed everything. What I thought was a normal gathering turned into a nightmare that revealed the truth about my marriage. I never expected my own husband to betray me like that. Before I tell you how I stood up for myself, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt taken advantage of by family, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. My parents were hardworking immigrants who instilled in me the values of education, perseverance, and independence. They always told me that in America, if you worked hard enough, you could achieve anything. I took those words to heart. College wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. Mornings at a coffee shop, evenings waiting tables, and weekends at a retail store. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, but education was my ticket to a better life. After graduating with a marketing degree, I started as an intern at a mid-size agency. I worked longer hours than anyone else, volunteered for the projects nobody wanted, and soaked up knowledge like a sponge. My dedication paid off. Year after year, I climbed the corporate ladder from intern to coordinator to manager, and finally to executive level. 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears had transformed me from that struggling student into a respected marketing professional with a 6-figure salary. Then I met James Bradford at a charity gala 6 years ago. I was there representing my agency, and he was there because, well, that's what wealthy people do. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. With his tailored suit, perfect smile, and confident demeanor, he embodied everything I thought success looked like. Our romance moved quickly. James swept me off my feet with extravagant dates, thoughtful gifts, and declarations of love that made my heart soar. Within 6 months, he proposed with a diamond ring that cost more than my first car. I said yes without hesitation. That's when I met the rest of the Bradfords. They lived in a sprawling estate in the wealthiest suburb of Chicago, the kind of place with manicured lawns and gates that keep the riffraff out. His father, William, was a retired investment banker who still served on several boards. His mother, Eleanor, was a socialite who chaired charity committees and hosted garden parties. They had the kind of wealth that's been in the family for generations, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's woven into the fabric of their existence. Looking back, the red flags were there from the beginning. During our first dinner together, Eleanor asked when I planned to settle down and focus on family. William nodded approvingly when James mentioned I might consider a less demanding career after marriage. James's brother Richard and his wife Stephanie exchanged knowing glances when I talked about my career goals. But I was in love, and love has a way of blinding you to the obvious. Our wedding was everything the Bradfords wanted it to be, lavish, traditional, and featured in a local society magazine. 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met, celebrated our union at the Bradford estate. My small family looked out of place among the country club crowd, but they were happy for me. The early years of our marriage were good, or so I thought. We bought a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood, mostly with my savings and income. James worked as a financial advisor at his father's friend's firm, though his career never seemed to progress the way mine did. I attributed it to different industries and different paths. Our attitudes toward money couldn't have been more different. Despite my success, I remained frugal, remembering the lean years of my youth. I comparison shopped, invested wisely, and planned for the future. James, having never known financial hardship, spent freely on designer clothes, club memberships, and impulsive purchases. I didn't mind supporting our lifestyle. I was proud of what I'd achieved and happy to provide us with the comfort we enjoyed. But I noticed that as my career flourished, James became increasingly resentful. Comments about my long hours became more frequent. Questions about my male colleagues became more pointed. Remarks about how much time I spent chasing money became more bitter. Meanwhile, his parents inserted themselves more and more into our lives. Sunday dinners at their estate became mandatory. Eleanor called daily to check in her questions, increasingly focused on our finances. William offered unsolicited investment advice and questioned my career decisions. They treated James like their little boy who needed guidance rather than a grown man with a wife. I tried to respect that they were his family, but their constant presence began to suffocate me. Still, I smiled and nodded, determined to be the perfect daughter-in-law they clearly didn't think I was. Then we bought our dream home, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the best school district, thinking ahead to the children we planned to have. I covered most of the down payment, and our mortgage was primarily based on my income. I didn't mind. It was our future, our dream. Little did I know that dream was about to turn into a nightmare. 3 months ago, James lost his job. The firm was downsizing, and despite his family connections, he was let go. I was sympathetic, of course. Losing a job can be devastating to anyone's self-esteem. I assured him we would be fine financially while he looked for new opportunities. My salary could cover our expenses and we had savings. This was just a temporary setback. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months. James's job search consisted of occasional online browsing and sporadic calls to family friends. Most of his days were spent golfing, watching TV, or visiting his parents. When I gently suggested networking events or career counselling, he became defensive. "Not everyone is a workaholic like you," he snapped during one particularly tense evening. "Some of us have other priorities besides climbing the corporate ladder." The comment stung, but I let it go. This wasn't the time for an argument, I thought. He was already feeling low. Our financial dynamics shifted dramatically. I became the sole breadwinner responsible for our mortgage, car payments, utilities, groceries, and James's still extravagant lifestyle. He saw no reason to cut back on his golf membership or weekly nights out with friends, despite our changed circumstances. The stress began to take its toll. I started waking up at 3 a.m., worrying about money. I took on extra projects at work, hoping for a bonus. I cancelled my own small indulgences, like my monthly massage and book club dinners, to stretch our budget further. Meanwhile, James grew increasingly distant. He spent more time at his parents' house, returning home late, with vague explanations. Our conversations became superficial, our intimacy non-existent. It felt like we were roommates rather than spouses, and not particularly friendly ones at that. The argument started small. I questioned a $400 charge at a high-end restaurant that I hadn't been invited to. James accused me of monitoring him like a child. I suggested we create a budget during his unemployment. He called me controlling and materialistic. "My family never monitors every penny like this," he said dismissively. "It's so middle class." The subtle digs at my background became more frequent. References to how things were done in good families, or what people like us expected. Each comment was a paper cut, small but stinging, and they were adding up. The phone calls from his parents increased. Eleanor would call, ostensibly to check on James, but the conversation inevitably turned to our finances. "Are you managing all right, dear?" she would ask in her syrupy voice. "James mentioned the new house is quite a financial stretch for you." I hadn't told James I found this intrusive. I wanted to be respectful of his relationship with his parents, especially during his unemployment, but my patience was wearing thin. Then came the day I overheard James on the phone with his mother. I had come home early from work with a migraine and was resting upstairs. His voice drifted up from the kitchen. "Yes, Mum, I know. She doesn't suspect anything. The meeting is set for Friday. Dad has everything prepared. She'll understand once we explain it properly. Yes, it's for the best. For the family." My stomach knotted with anxiety. What meeting? What was I not supposed to suspect? I wanted to confront him immediately, but something held me back. I needed more information before I showed my hand. That evening, James announced that his parents had invited us for dinner on Friday to discuss our future. His tone was casual, but he couldn't quite meet my eyes. "What's there to discuss?" I asked, watching him closely. "Just family stuff," he said vaguely. "Dad wants to talk about some financial planning that could help us while I'm between jobs." I nodded, pretending to accept this explanation, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. In the days leading up to the dinner, James was jumpy and secretive. I caught him reviewing documents that he quickly hid when I entered the room. He had multiple hushed phone conversations with his parents and brother. My unease grew with each passing day. Whatever was coming, I knew it wouldn't be good. The Bradford estate looked particularly imposing that Friday evening. The wrought iron gates, the long circular driveway, the colonial mansion with its perfect symmetry and manicured gardens, all seemed to emphasize the wealth and power of the family I had married into. As James parked his car, I noticed his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," he replied too quickly. "Just hungry." The household staff greeted us at the door, taking our coats and directing us to the formal living room where drinks were being served. William and Eleanor were already there, along with Richard and Stephanie. The atmosphere was strangely formal for a family dinner. "Fidela, darling." Eleanor ear kissed both my cheeks. "That dress is interesting." It was a perfectly nice dress from a designer boutique, but I knew what she meant. It wasn't from her preferred stores or designers. After 5 years, these subtle put-downs no longer surprised me. William handed James a scotch without asking if he wanted one, then offered me white wine, which I declined in favour of water. I needed a clear head tonight. "How's the job hunt going, son?" William asked Shiyam, though I suspected he already knew the answer. James shifted uncomfortably. "Still looking for the right fit. Something will turn up." "Of course it will." Eleanor patted his arm. "Bradford men always land on their feet." The conversation during dinner was painfully stiff. Questions about my work were notably absent, though normally they at least pretended to be interested. Richard and Stephanie kept exchanging glances as if they were in on a secret. The tension was palpable, like the air before a thunderstorm. After dinner, instead of moving to the living room for coffee as usual, William stood and gestured toward his study. "I think we should move to my office for our discussion," he said with authority. My heart began to race. The study was where William conducted business and held serious family meetings. Whatever they had planned, it was happening now. The study was a masculine space with dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and shelves of books that looked more decorative than read. William took his place behind a massive desk, a power move that wasn't lost on me. Eleanor sat in an armchair to his right. James, Richard, and Stephanie sat on the sofa across from me, leaving me alone in a chair directly facing William, like a job interview, or perhaps an interrogation. "Fidela," William began steepling his fingers. "We've asked you here tonight to discuss an important family matter." I nodded but said nothing, waiting. "As you know, the Bradfords have a long history of family unity and mutual support," he continued. "For generations, we've pooled our resources to strengthen the family as a whole." Eleanor smiled tightly. "It's what separates old families from new money, dear." Another dig at my background. I kept my expression neutral. "The thing is," William leaned forward, "we need to discuss your contribution to the family finances." I blinked in surprise. "My contribution, I'm not sure I understand." Eleanor reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder which she passed to William. He opened it, and I could see what appeared to be a spreadsheet with my name at the top. "We've been reviewing your financial situation," William explained, turning the paper toward me. I froze as I saw what it contained. It was a detailed breakdown of my salary, bonuses, benefits, and assets. Information I had never shared with them. "How did you get this information?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the anger building inside me. "James has kept us informed," Eleanor said dismissively, as if this invasion of privacy was perfectly normal. "We're family after all." I looked at James, who had the decency to look ashamed, but he said nothing in my defense. "The point is," William continued, tapping the paper with his manicured finger, "as a Bradford, it's time you contributed to the family fund." "Family fund," I repeated. "Yes, it's quite simple," William explained, as if talking to a child. "Family members contribute 50% of their income to a central fund that I manage for the benefit of the entire family. It's how we maintain our lifestyle and secure our collective future." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "You want half my salary?" "It's not just about want Fidela," Eleanor interjected. "It's about responsibility to the family name you now carry." I looked at Richard and Stephanie, who nodded in confirmation. "We've been contributing since we got married," Stephanie said. "It's just how things are done in this family." I turned to James, waiting for him to speak up to defend me, to say this was all a misunderstanding. Instead, he reached for my hand. "Honey, I know it sounds strange at first, but it really does make sense," he said, his voice pleading. "Dad has grown the family wealth this way for years. It's for our future, for the children we'll have." I pulled my hand away, the betrayal cutting deep. "And you've been discussing this behind my back, sharing my private financial information without my consent." "Don't be so dramatic, dear," Eleanor sighed. "This is simply how our family operates." "The Bradford Fund has outperformed the market consistently," William added, as if this were a business pitch. "Your contribution won't be wasted." "Plus," Richard chimed in, "with James currently between jobs, your contribution is especially important to maintain the family's financial stability." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. James's lack of urgency in finding a job, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in my finances. This wasn't a new idea they had come up with. This was the plan all along. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want me to give you 50% of my salary, which I earned through my own hard work, so you can control how it's spent and invested." Control is such a negative word. William frowned. "I prefer manage for the collective good." "And if I refuse?" I asked. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Well?" William's voice hardened. That would demonstrate a concerning lack of commitment to this family, wouldn't it? The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence that followed William's thinly veiled threat. My mind was reeling, processing not just the outrageous demand, but the complete violation of trust that had led to this moment. James had been sharing my private financial information with his family all along. Every raise, every bonus, every investment decision I had made, thinking it was between my husband and me, had actually been family dinner conversation for the Bradfords. As the shock began to fade, a cold anger took its place. I thought about all the nights I had stayed late at the office, the weekends sacrificed, the vacations cut short for important projects. Every promotion I had fought for, every client I had won, over every success I had earned through my own merit and determination. And now the Bradfords felt entitled to half of it, simply because I had married into their family. I remembered how I had supported James through his career frustrations, how I had taken on extra work to cover our expenses when he was between positions, how I had never once complained about being the primary breadwinner. I had considered it a partnership where we both contributed in different ways. But now I saw the truth. To James and his family, I was just a resource to be exploited. You all planned this, I said quietly, the realization washing over me. James losing his job wasn't a setback, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to tap into my income. William shifted uncomfortably, but didn't deny it. Eleanor's tight smile didn't waver. James looked at the floor. That's why you haven't been seriously looking for work. I continued looking at my husband. Because you and your parents already had a plan for how my income would support you. That's not fair, James finally spoke up. I've been looking. Half-heartedly at best, I countered, and now I understand why. Fidela, William's voice grew firmer, clearly annoyed that this wasn't going according to plan. This isn't a negotiation. This is how the Bradford family works. Richard and Stephanie understand this. It's time you did too. Yes, Eleanor added. Perhaps this is difficult for you to understand coming from your background, but family unity is paramount to people like us. People like us. The phrase hung in the air, the implication crystal clear. I would never truly be one of them. I was an outsider who had been allowed in conditionally, and now those conditions were being made explicit. James reached for my hand again. Honey, please try to understand. This is for our future, for our security. Our security? I pulled my hand away again. Or your family's control. You're being unreasonable. William's voice rose slightly, his composure cracking. This is a perfectly standard arrangement in families of our standing. Standard for who? I asked. Because in my world, adults manage their own money and make their own financial decisions. Your world, Eleanor sniffed dismissively. That's precisely the issue, isn't it? You're still thinking like an individual, not as part of this family. Mom, please, James interjected, sensing the conversation was spiraling. Fidela, what they're trying to say is that we need to think about the bigger picture. The Bradford name opens doors. The connections, the prestige, it all has value. Value that apparently comes with a price tag of half my salary, I replied. Richard leaned forward. Look, I know it seems strange at first. Stephanie felt the same way when she joined the family, but she came to see the benefits. Stephanie nodded. The family has helped us in so many ways. The down payment for our house, the private schools for the kids, the vacations. It all comes from the family fund. So it's a pyramid scheme, I said flatly. The people at the top benefit the most while everyone else pays in. William's face flushed with anger. That is enough. This attitude is precisely why new money never lasts. No understanding of legacy, of family duty, of proper financial management. William, Eleanor placed a hand on his arm, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. Fidela is simply experiencing the same adjustment period all new family members go through. She'll come around once she understands the benefits. And if I don't, I challenged. James looked at me with panic in his eyes. Fidela, please don't be difficult. This is how things are done. It's not personal. Not personal. My own husband thought that claiming half my income wasn't personal. The full weight of his betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect, trust, and the fundamental nature of our marriage. James, I said quietly, do you truly believe this is reasonable, that your family has the right to control my income this way? He looked trapped, glancing between me and his parents. I think that family has to come first. That's how I was raised. And there it was, the moment of perfect clarity. In James's world, family didn't include me. It meant his parents, his brother, the Bradford name. I was an outsider who was useful only as long as I contributed what they wanted. I looked around at their expectant faces, William confident that I would fall in line, Eleanor smug in her social superiority, Richard and Stephanie relieved that someone else would be footing the bill now, and James, my husband, the man I had loved and supported, sitting there silently as his family tried to take what was mine. Something broke inside me in that moment, but something else was born in its place. A steely resolve that I hadn't known I possessed. I took a deep breath, the kind that fills not just your lungs but your spine with strength. The room was silent, all eyes on me, waiting for my capitulation. They were so confident in their power, so certain of my compliance, that they hadn't prepared for any other outcome. I've listened to all of you very carefully. I began my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions within me, and I appreciate your candor about how the Bradford family operates. William nodded approvingly, mistaking my calm tone for acceptance. Eleanor's tight smile softened slightly. James looked relieved. They thought they had won. They were wrong. Before I respond to your proposal, I'd like to share some information of my own. I continued, straightening in my chair. Information I've gathered while preparing our taxes for the past 5 years. William's smile faltered slightly. Eleanor's hand tightened on her armrest. Did you know, William, that the IRS has specific rules about family trusts and how they're reported, especially when those trusts are being used to avoid certain tax obligations? The colour drained from William's face. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. As the person who has handled our household finances and taxes since James and I married, I've seen documentation that raises some interesting questions. This wasn't entirely a bluff. I had indeed noticed some irregularities in the family's financial dealings while helping James with his portion of the taxes. Nothing definitively illegal, but certainly in a grey area that would merit further investigation if brought to light. That's completely irrelevant to our discussion, William said sharply. Is it? I think it speaks directly to your claim of superior financial management. Which brings me to another question. If this family fund is so beneficial to everyone, why does it only apply to income from those who married into the family? I don't see you contributing 50% of your investment income, William. Or you, Eleanor, sharing half of your trust fund dividends. Eleanor's face flushed with indignation. That's entirely different. Is it? Or is this family fund just a way for you to maintain control and siphon money from those you consider beneath you? James finally found his voice. Fidela, that's not fair. My parents have built something important. Have they? I turned to him, my heart breaking at his continued defense of them. Then why have you been hiding their financial demands from me? Why the secret phone calls, the hushed meetings, the sharing of my private financial information without my consent? If this arrangement is so beneficial and reasonable, why all the secrecy? James had no answer for that. I also find it interesting, I continued looking at Richard and Stephanie, that you never mentioned this arrangement in all the years we've known each other. All those family dinners, all those holidays, and this vital family tradition never came up once. Why is that? Richard shifted uncomfortably. Stephanie suddenly became very interested in her manicure. And let's talk about family values, I said, turning back to William and Eleanor. You speak so eloquently about unity and collective good, yet you've systematically made me feel like an outsider for 5 years. Every comment about my background, my career, my choices has underscored that I don't truly belong. That's ridiculous, Eleanor protested weakly. Is it last Christmas you gave everyone personalized gifts except me? I received a generic department store scarf still in the gift box, while Stephanie got a family heirloom brooch. Stephanie had the grace to look embarrassed. 3 months ago, when I was promoted, none of you called to congratulate me. When Richard got a minor award at his firm, we had a family dinner to celebrate. Richard couldn't meet my eyes. 2 years ago, when I suggested contributing to a charity James and I both cared about, you dismissed it as not the type of cause the Bradfords support. Yet a month later, you made a donation to the same organisation when the Hendersons suggested it. William's jaw tightened, knowing I was right. So let me be very clear, I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. I will not be contributing to your family fund. Not 50%, not 5%, not a single penny. The shock on their faces would have been comical in any other circumstance. Furthermore, I continued, reaching into my purse and pulling out my phone. I've been documenting the financial manipulation and pressure tactics used against me, including tonight's meeting. I've already consulted with a financial advisor about protecting my assets, and tomorrow I'll be speaking with an attorney." James went pale. "An attorney, Fidela, that's extreme. Is it because from where I'm sitting, my husband conspiring with his family to take control of my hard-earned money is what's extreme?" William stood up, his authority challenged. "Now see here, young lady." "No, you see here," I interrupted, standing, as well refusing to be physically dominated. "I came into this marriage in good faith, bringing my own success, my own strengths. I supported James emotionally and financially. I respected this family despite the constant subtle digs and condescension. And how have you repaid that good faith? With deception, manipulation, and greed." I turned to James, the pain in my heart evident in my voice despite my resolve. "I thought I married a partner. Someone who would stand by me, respect me, and protect me if needed. Instead, I married a man who sees me as a resource to be exploited for his family's benefit." James stood now, too, panic in his eyes. "Fidela, please, you're overreacting. We can discuss this." "We just did discuss it," I replied coldly. "This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. You all planned this ambush carefully, assuming I would simply fall in line. That's not a discussion, that's a power play." Kiss. I looked around the room at each of their faces, memorizing this moment, this turning point in my life. I built my career from nothing. I earned every dollar through hard work, talent, and perseverance. No one handed me anything. And no one, especially not people who claim to be family, has the right to demand I hand it over to them. I picked up my purse and turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. "Oh, and just so we're completely clear, I've already moved my accounts to a bank where none of you have connections. I've changed all my passwords, and I've placed a fraud alert on my credit, just in case anyone was considering other methods of accessing what's mine." The look of shock on William's face confirmed my suspicions that he had indeed been considering such options. "Fidela, please." James moved toward me, but I held up my hand. "Don't follow me, James. Don't call me. Don't text me. I need space to think about whether this marriage has any future at all." With that, I walked out of the study through the grand hallway with its family portraits of Bradford's past and out the massive front door into the cool night air. For the first time since entering that house 5 years ago, I felt like I could truly breathe. As I drove away, I caught a last glimpse of the Bradford estate in my rearview mirror, its windows glowing with warm light that had never truly included me. But instead of sadness, I felt something unexpected: freedom. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage. My hands shook on the steering wheel as the full impact of the evening washed over me. 5 years of marriage, and I had never truly known the man I was married to. The depth of the deception was staggering. James had been reporting my financial details to his family all along, setting the stage for tonight's ambush, all while smiling to my face and telling me he loved me. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I sat in the car for a long moment staring at the house we had bought together. Our dream home, except it had never really been ours, had it? It had been another piece in the Bradford family's game. Inside the house felt different, as if the evening's revelations had physically altered the space. I walked through the room, seeing everything with new eyes. The furniture we had chosen together, the photographs of our wedding and honeymoon, the life we had built, which now seemed like an elaborate facade. I collapsed onto the sofa and finally let the tears flow freely. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the husband I believed in, for the 5 years spent with people who had never truly accepted me and never would. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from James, each more desperate than the last. "Please come back. We can talk about this. You misunderstood. It's not what you think. My parents are just trying to help us. Don't make any hasty decisions." I silenced the phone and tossed it aside. There was nothing he could say tonight that would undo what had been revealed. I barely slept, my mind replaying the evening's events on an endless loop. By morning, exhaustion had given way to clarity. I knew what I needed to do. My first call was to Natalie, my oldest and most trusted friend. She had never particularly liked James, sensing something I had been blind to, and had maintained a respectful distance from the Bradfords, despite their thinly veiled disapproval of our friendship. "They did what?" she exclaimed when I told her what happened. "Oh, honey, I'm coming over right now." Within an hour, Natalie was at my door with coffee pastries and the unwavering support I desperately needed. She listened without interruption as I poured out the whole sordid story. "I knew they were snobs, but this is next level," she said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "First, I need to protect myself legally and financially." I said the plan forming as I spoke. "I need a good divorce attorney. My cousin used someone when she divorced that jerk, Greg." Natalie pulled out her phone. She said the woman was a shark in the courtroom, but really supportive through the process. I'll get you her number. By noon, I had an appointment with Patricia Watkins, a divorce attorney known for handling high-conflict cases involving significant assets. My next call was to my bank, where I confirmed that my personal accounts, the ones I had maintained separately from our joint accounts, were secure. Then I contacted my company's HR department to ensure that my future paychecks would go only to my personal account. I was in the middle of gathering important documents when I heard James's key in the lock. I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. He looked terrible, as if he hadn't slept either. Good. Fidelo, he started, his voice pleading. We need to talk. About what? I asked coolly. About how you've been sharing my private financial information with your parents for years, or about how you and your family plan to take control of my income. It's not like that, he protested weakly. The family fund is a real thing. It's helped all of us. All of you, or just your parents and their control over everyone else, I countered. And don't pretend this was a spur-of-the-moment idea. You've been planning this for months probably since you lost your job, if not before. He had the decency to look ashamed but quickly rallied. My parents were just trying to help us plan for our future. They've managed the family wealth successfully for decades. Our future, or their control over us. I shook my head in disbelief. James, do you even hear yourself? You're defending people who demanded half of my salary while contributing none of their own wealth to this supposed family fund. They contribute in other ways, he argued. The connections, the opportunities, the legacy. The legacy, I repeated bitterly. The almighty Bradford name. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Preserving the illusion of old money power while actually using other people's money to maintain it. You're twisting everything. James ran his hands through his hair in frustration. This is how my family has always operated. It's normal to me. Normal, invading your spouse's privacy is normal. Plotting behind their back is normal, ambushing them with financial demands is normal. My voice rose with each question. If that's normal to you, then we have very different definitions of a healthy marriage. You're overreacting, James tried again. Let's just calm down and discuss this rationally. I am being rational, I said coldly. In fact, I've never seen things more clearly. I've spent the morning protecting myself legally and financially. I've spoken to a divorce attorney. I'm gathering my important documents. These are all rational actions in response to a profound betrayal. The word divorce hit him like a physical blow. Divorce, Fidela, no. That's extreme. We can work this out. Can we? Because from where I stand, the foundation of trust in our marriage has been completely shattered. You chose your family over me. You violated my privacy. You conspired against me. Those aren't small issues we can resolve with a few conversations. I love you, he said desperately. Doesn't that count for anything? The words that once would have melted my resolve now rang hollow. Love without respect isn't love at all, James. It's possession, and I won't be possessed by you or your family. What do you want me to do? He asked suddenly, looking lost. Tell me and I'll do it. I want you to leave, I said firmly. I need space to think clearly without your manipulation or your family's interference. I'm going to stay with Natalie for a while. You're leaving our home. He looked genuinely shocked, as if he couldn't conceive of me making such a decision without his approval. It's not leaving, I corrected him. It's taking space to protect myself and decide what I want for my future. A future that right now I'm not sure includes you. James followed me upstairs as I packed a bag alternating between anger pleading and attempts to minimize what had happened. His reaction only confirmed that I was making the right decision. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect, trust, and fundamental values. As I prepared to leave, James made one last desperate attempt. My parents were wrong to approach it that way. I see that now. We can figure out a different arrangement, something that works for both of us. I paused at the door and looked at him. Really looked at the man I had married and thought I knew. That's just it, James. There shouldn't need to be an arrangement at all. My money is mine. Your family has no right to it, and the fact that you think they do tells me everything I need to know about how you view our marriage. With that, I walked out the door, my small suitcase in hand, leaving James standing in the doorway of the house we had bought together, the dream that had turned into a nightmare. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, emotional conversations with friends and family, and restless nights on Natalie's guest bed. James called and texted constantly, his messages evolving from defensive to apologetic as the reality of our separation sank in. "I've been talking to a therapist," one message read. "I'm starting to see how wrong this all was." Friends attempted to intervene. Mutual acquaintances called with both sides' perspectives and suggestions for reconciliation. I listened politely but remained firm in my decision to take space and consider my options carefully. Then came the calls from James's family. Eleanor left sugary voicemails about family misunderstandings and how we all say things we don't mean in the heat of the moment. William's messages were more direct, mentioning legal and financial ramifications if I continued on this destructive path. I forwarded them all to my attorney. A week into our separation, I moved into a small but modern apartment downtown close to my office. The space was entirely mine, decorated exactly as I wanted, with no Bradford influence or expectations. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe freely. James eventually stopped trying to downplay what had happened and began to show what seemed like genuine remorse. He agreed to attend therapy both individually and with me if I was willing. He promised to establish firm boundaries with his family. He swore he had come to see how toxic their financial control had been. "I've been so blind," he said, during one of our carefully negotiated coffee meetings. "Growing up in that environment, I never questioned it, but I see now how wrong it was. How wrong I was." His words sounded sincere, but trust once shattered isn't easily rebuilt. I agreed to attend a few therapy sessions with him, not because I was ready to reconcile, but because I wanted to understand how we had ended up here, how the man I loved had been capable of such betrayal. In therapy, James revealed the extent of his family's control over him throughout his life, how his entire identity had been shaped by the Bradford name and expectations, how deviating from family norms had always resulted in emotional and financial punishment, how he had been raised to believe that family loyalty trumped all other considerations, including his marriage vows. "That doesn't excuse what I did," he acknowledged, "but I'm trying to understand it myself so I can change." I listened, I empathized with his struggle, but I also maintained my boundaries. "Understanding why you betrayed me doesn't undo the betrayal," I told him. "Some broken things can't be fixed." As weeks turned into months, James continued his therapy and began standing up to his family in ways he never had before. He refused to attend the mandatory Sunday dinners. He declined financial assistance that came with strings attached. He even began looking for jobs outside of his father's sphere of influence. "I need to be my own person," he told me during one of our increasingly amicable meetings. "Whether or not we reconcile, I need to find out who I am outside of the Bradford expectations." It was growth, real growth, and part of me was proud of him for it. But another part knew that this journey was his alone, and that our paths might have permanently diverged on that fateful night at the Bradford estate. 6 months after that fateful family dinner, I sat in my new apartment watching the city lights twinkle through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The space had become truly mine, filled with books I'd always wanted to read, art that spoke to me, and a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. My divorce from James had been finalized the previous week, a bittersweet end to a chapter of my life that had once held so much promise. The healing journey hadn't been easy. There were days when grief overwhelmed me, when I questioned if I had given up too easily on my marriage. Therapy helped me recognize that my decision wasn't about giving up, but about valuing myself enough to walk away from a relationship that fundamentally lacked respect and honesty. "Grief isn't just for death," my therapist had explained. "You're grieving the marriage you thought you had, the future you had planned, the person you thought James was. That grief is valid and needs to be honored." So I honored it. I cried when I needed to. I journaled about my anger and disappointment. I allowed myself to feel the full spectrum of emotions that came with such a profound betrayal and loss. Slowly, I reconnected with parts of myself that had become submerged during my marriage. I rekindled relationships with family members who had felt unwelcome in the Bradford sphere. My parents, who had always been uncomfortable around James's family, but had kept their concerns to themselves, became regular visitors to my new home. Their unwavering support reminded me of the authentic love I deserved. At work, my focus and determination paid off with an unexpected promotion to Chief Marketing Officer. The board cited my resilience and innovative thinking during personal challenges as key factors in their decision. The irony wasn't lost on me that my professional life was soaring just as my personal life had crashed. But perhaps the two weren't unrelated. Without the constant drain of trying to fit into the Bradford mold, my creativity and confidence had flourished. With my new position came increased financial security and the opportunity to create a financial plan aligned with my own values. I established a personal charitable foundation focused on educational opportunities for underprivileged young women. I invested in sustainable businesses led by diverse teams. I created a retirement plan that balanced security with my desire to travel and experience new cultures. Each decision was mine alone, a reclaiming of autonomy that felt like healing. As for James, our paths crossed occasionally through mutual friends. He had somewhat surprisingly maintained his independence from his family. He had found a job at a smaller firm where he was judged on his own merits rather than his family connections. He had even moved to a modest apartment downtown, not far from mine, though we had never run into each other. 3 months after our divorce was finalized, he asked to meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "I owe you an apology," he said as soon as we sat down. A real one, not the defensive half apologies I gave during our separation. What my family and I did was wrong on every level. There's no justification, no explanation that makes it okay. And I am deeply, truly sorry for betraying you that way. His words seemed genuinely heartfelt. His eyes clear in a way they hadn't been during our marriage, as if he was finally seeing the world without the Bradford filter. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means something to me. I want you to know that I finally stood up to my parents," he continued. Really stood up to them, not just the surface-level resistance I showed before. I told them their manipulation and control were the reason I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. We haven't spoken since. "I'm not telling you this to try to win you back," he clarified. "I know that bridges burned and it's my fault. I just wanted you to know that what you said that night about respect and trust, it finally got through to me. You deserve better than what I gave you, and I'll always regret not being the husband you deserved." We parted with a handshake and genuine well wishes for each other's futures. It wasn't closure exactly, because some wounds never fully close, but it was a kind of peace and acknowledgement that we had both learned and grown from the painful end of our marriage. Back at work, I found myself becoming a mentor to younger women navigating their own careers and relationships. One day, a junior marketing coordinator named Maya came to my office clearly distressed. "I'm sorry to bother you," she began nervously, "but I could really use some advice. My boyfriend's family is pressuring me to put my inheritance into a family business, and something doesn't feel right about it." I invited her to sit and share her story, which echoed mine in disturbing ways. The same pressure tactics, the same manipulation, the same implication that saying no would mean she wasn't truly committed to the relationship. "Trust your instincts," I told her firmly. "If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Your money is yours to control, no matter how much someone says they love you." I shared a condensed version of my own experience, careful not to let my biases overly influence her decision, but wanting her to know she wasn't alone in facing such pressure. "I had no idea you went through something like that," she said, looking at me with new respect. "You always seem so confident and together." I smiled. This confidence was hard-won. Standing up for yourself often is. But I've never regretted choosing self-respect, even when it was the harder path. As Maya left my office with new determination in her step, I reflected on how our hardest experiences often become the wisdom we share with others. My painful ending with James had transformed into a lesson that might help Maya avoid the same pitfalls. There was a certain beauty in that transformation, a purpose in the pain. The months continued to pass, and I began cautiously dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner with interesting men I met through friends or professional events. I was transparent about my divorce and the trust issues it had left me with. Some were scared off by my honesty, but others appreciated it. I had learned that authentic connection, even if sometimes uncomfortable, was worth more than comfortable illusions. Financial independence had become a non-negotiable value for me, not just in my own life, but in any potential relationship. I was clear about maintaining separate accounts and financial autonomy, even while being open to building a shared life in other ways. "Isn't that a bit cold?" one date asked when I explained my perspective. "Shouldn't married people share everything?" "Transparency isn't the same as control," I explained. I believe in financial honesty and joint planning, but not in giving up autonomy. True partnership means respecting each other's independence while choosing to build something together. He didn't ask for a second date, which told me everything I needed to know about our compatibility. As I sit here now watching the sunset paint the city in gold, I feel a profound gratitude for the difficult journey that led me here. Had James and his family never revealed their true intentions, I might have spent decades in a marriage built on deception, slowly losing pieces of myself to maintain the Bradford illusion. Instead, I reclaimed my power. I rebuilt a life aligned with my values. I discovered a strength in myself I hadn't known existed until it was tested. The betrayal that once felt like an ending had become a beginning, a doorway to authentic living. The Bradford family thought they were entitled to half of what I had earned. In the end, they got nothing, while I gained everything that truly matters: self-respect, authentic relationships, and the freedom to live according to my own values rather than someone else's expectations. Some people might see my story as a cautionary tale about marriage and family interference. Others might see it as a story of female empowerment or financial independence. But I see it as something simpler and more universal, a reminder that we always have the power to choose ourselves, to walk away from relationships that diminish us, and to build a life that honors our true worth, no matter how difficult that choice might be in the moment. If you've ever felt pressured to give up your autonomy or sacrifice your hard-earned success for someone else's benefit, I hope my story gives you the courage to stand firm in your worth. No one has the right to demand what you've earned through your own efforts. True love, true family lifts you up rather than using you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away, head held high, from those who cannot see your value. Thank you for listening to my story. If you face similar situations with family or partners trying to control your finances, please share in the comments below. Let's support each other in standing firm for our financial independence. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if this resonated with you. And I'll be back next week with another story about finding strength when you least expect it.